me see if this is working. Hello, hello, hello. All right, I canceled a bunch of podcasts, so presumably I should have enough space, but remind me to check, because of Murphy's Law being what it is, it's going to immediately turn off as soon as see, it's still going. All right, so today is Monday, August 30th. This is Art in Rome, the B class. So, keep in mind that we're visiting a city with thousands of years of history, and there are a lot of dates. It's not so important the specific date, but it is important history and when things occur. So I suggest, and this will be something on the midterm and the final, chronological order. And the nicest way to cope with that, in my opinion, is drawing out a timeline. Because as much as we'd like to do everything from, like a human, from birth to youth to middle age, all the way up to what we could say old age, which would be the present for us, I suppose. That's not always possible. And we jump around a lot. So today we're going to see a few things from the Renaissance, from the Baroque, from the 1940s, which is the fascist era. We'll get into terms and definitions a little bit at a time, so don't worry about that right now. But we jump all over the place. There's a lot of dates. And you will need to organize those in your mind and use a timeline, because it's important that it's understood. The Middle Ages, when is that compared to ancient Rome? So, for example, the Middle Ages, is that before or after ancient Rome? Anybody tell me that? After, so that's correct. It seems like an obvious thing, but if you haven't studied it yet, why would you know? Okay? So, write this down just as a very basic thing. Prehistory, prehistoric. What does prehistoric mean? It literally means before history. And what is history? History is the written word. So prehistory just means there was no, before books, before writing. So Egypt, they had hieroglyphics. Is that prehistoric or is that historic? It is indeed historic, because they had writing. But the caves of Lascaux, the cave paintings with these guys attacking these gigantic bison, prehistoric or historic? Prehistoric. There's no alphabet, no writing. Okay? So the prehistory of this area, of course, they have elements of that, pottery or holes in the ground where huts were, things like that. We won't be going really into any of that. But we are going to be seeing and talking about Republican Rome, the Roman Republic. You can think of it like that. The Roman Republic. That would be the BC period. BC, what does that mean? BC, before Christ. Now, in the States, I think you guys say BCE, before the Common Era. In Italy, we say before Christ. It means the same thing. And what would be the date before Christ? Anybody have an example? Anybody, go ahead. 1000 BC. 1000 BC. And, okay, 0 being the birth of Christ. Of course, these are partly arbitrary. No one really knows, more or less. And then, from 0 forward, AD. BC AD. Capital letters. AD, anybody know what that means? After death? That sounds kind of like a heavy metal album.
It's Italian.
It's Latin.
Yeah,
it's Latin. Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. Anno Domini. A-N-N-O. Domini. Just like domination, dominus. The dominus was the ruler of the house, the head of the household. If you guys want to watch a entertaining television series, the Roma, the HBO Roma. You can stream it, download it, borrow it. And they refer to the head of the household, who's this powerful aristocratic woman. Her slaves come and say, Dominus, Dominus. That's like saying my lady or madam or something. But we're talking about God being the supreme ruler. So Anno Domini, A-N-N-O-D-O-M-I-N-I, Anno Domini. So BC, before Christ, Anno Domini. And in fact, in Italian, they say AC, Avanti Cristo, which means before Christ in Italian. Okay? So that's a little bit of the basics. Okay, so anybody want to tell me what are we right now, including the specific AD or BC? What is the year?
2021 AD.
AD, 2021 AD. All right. The Roman Republic. I'm not going to do all of it, so don't worry. I'm just want to throw it out there to give you guys familiarity. The Roman Republic is the BC period, generally speaking. Okay, the Roman Republic is the BC period, just like the age of the pharaohs, just like the glory of ancient Greece, the height of Athens, things like that. Athens, you studied a little bit of that, presumably something in high school. Okay, democracy, all that. That's BC. The Roman Empire, the time of the Colosseum, the time of the Roman emperors, is AD. Anno Domini. Okay?
What is the Latin word for
BC is, well, no, I didn't say Latin, it was the Italian. I was just mentioning it as an aside. Avanti Cristo, which is just the literal translation of before Christ. All right, so this is just hopefully to give you just basic idea. And even right now, those of you who have paper, write a little timeline and put those dots on it. Put a dot, put a line in the middle, and then before that put BC, and after it put AD, and then write Roman Republic, BC, Roman Empire, AD, just to help you, remind you of that line. Okay? Now, generally speaking, the Roman Empire declines and falls, and that brings us to what do we call the era in Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire? The Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, which generally is a period of decline. But that's especially, we think of it as a decline because of when we compare it to ancient Rome. When ancient Rome has roads that span the entire Mediterranean, when you could send a letter in 2 weeks 2,000 years ago, when you could cross from Egypt to Italy, to the frontier of Germany, to Spain, to North Africa in a couple weeks. That was because the Roman Empire was a functioning state with a massive empire, a massive army. The monopoly of force. The monopoly of force means I have the government, I have the military, I make the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, there are consequences. And what that means is pirates, they're strung up, their heads are on display in the public square, whatever. You want to discourage the bad behavior, which, how would you say it? The bad behavior that impedes commerce, because it's all about the economy, the flow of goods. Now, it's not a coincidence that in the first century AD, a new religion started to kind of have an influence. And if you look at certain chapters of the New Testament of the Bible, what are the names of those chapters? Corinthians. What's another one I can't remember? Romans. These are letters that the Apostle Paul sent to these communities, right? So those letters are letters that are posted and sent, or they're sent with courier or whatever. So that there's a back and forth going on. So that shows you an economy, a civilization, a degree of security and predictability in daily life, that you know you're going to go downstairs and you're going to be able to shop and send a letter and go to the market and go to the games and do the kind of things that when you have a functioning society with, you know, laws and consequences and a ruling class and social orders, things work. And you can send a letter and you can send your kid to school and all these kind of things, okay? So it's easy for us to take those things for granted, but when that state collapses, when all those systems stop functioning, you're not going to cross the empire in 2 weeks. You're not going to go 50 miles. And hopefully, none of you have been to Florence yet? Okay, some of you have. Well, I hope you'll go. You take the fast train or the slow train from Termini. Fast train, it's an hour and 45 minutes. And that train's going to zip you right up the valley of the Tiber River. And you're going to see every couple miles dotting that river valley, these wonderful villages, medieval, high up on these hills and outcroppings, right? Why would these people go live way up there and build a wall around their city in the Middle Ages? Go ahead. It's a way to keep safe. So basically, it's not such a good idea to have a little isolated house in a farm in the middle of nowhere in the Middle Ages. During the Roman Empire, everything was secure enough that that was fine, but now, not such a good idea. And in fact, there's a phenomena that's called, well, I don't know the equivalent in English, but let's just say a process of fortification, where people move into these villages over the centuries, high up, protected, and then they come out during the day to go farm, and then the gates close, and that's it at night, right? So that's a good, I hope that's clear to you, the contrast between the Roman era, the civilization of the Roman Empire, its decline, and now the Middle Ages, which is a much, is it more secure or less secure?
Less.
It's much less secure, right? And all those nice added benefits of being able to travel around and having imported goods from far away and all that stuff. I mean, if you think about it, in our current civilization, the fact that, you know, a bunch of gigantic container ships in China come all the way across the world to bring you a bunch of stuff and you go into a shop, that's an incredibly highly organized and sophisticated system of distribution of goods. And ancient Rome, there was that kind of equivalent, stuff coming from far away, right? Not so much in the Middle Ages. It's a lot more expensive, right? So, recapping, BC, the Roman Republic. The Roman Republic will transform into the Roman Empire. By the 5th century AD or BC, which one is it when the Roman Empire falls? AD. 5th century AD, the Roman Empire begins to collapse. And now we have the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, the medieval period, you call it whatever you want. Okay, so basically you could say from the 5th century AD to the 15th century AD, about 1,000 years. The 5th century AD to the 15th century AD, about 1,000 years. And good for you for making a timeline. Kudos to the man. What's your name?
Adam.
Adam, there he is, the first man, Adam. And he's got his timeline. So now we come to the 15th century, which is, and this is another thing you might be not be familiar with it. If I say the 15th century, what is that in years? What years are those? Is it the 1500s? Say it louder.
1400.
It's the 1400s, so watch out for that.
What?
Why is that?
Wow.
It's because it's the way we count.
Okay.
Because
First century.
the first century is from zero to 100. or 0 to 99. The second century, because it is the second century, is from 99 to 199, right? So 20th century Fox, 20th century was the 20th century, the 1900s. The 20th century was the 1900s. So now we're in the noughts, as the British would say, or the 2000s, and it is what century?
21st.
The 21st century. Okay? So the 13th century, what years would that be?
1200.
1200. See, you just take away a digit. 13th century, 1200s. 14th century, 1300s. 15th century, 1400s. And now we are at, generally speaking, because these are all, obviously, we can't be that precise. It's just to help you orient. The 1400s is the kind of the era where we say the Renaissance begins. The Renaissance begins. Okay? The Renaissance.
The 14.
1400s is the Renaissance beginning. But it's also, you could say just as equally, the 1400s is when the Dark Ages are coming to an end. Because it's not an exact science. It depends on where you go. My little holiday, my friend lives in France, and we went up into the French Alps, and I saw a photo of a painting from a church, and it said it was the 1400s. And this religious painting from the 1400s in this French church was backward and medieval and simple compared to Italy in the 1400s, because the Renaissance, the sophistication of the art and the living that is the Renaissance in Italy, it diffuses over different places, but not simultaneously. Is that clear? It's an Italian phenomena, and it influences other countries. Okay, she was first. 2 questions. Go ahead.
I was going to ask if the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages are the same thing, but I think they are.
Yeah, the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages are just 2 ways of saying the same thing.
Thank you.
Okay,
That was actually the exact same thing.
same question. Well, there you go. Yeah. Okay, so let's finish this timeline and then we'll go. Because these terms, the terms that I'm giving you, they're going to come up a million times. So, don't feel like you have to get it all or grasp everything I'm saying right now. I understand, especially, it's unbelievable that you guys are just out of high school, So, like when I did my year abroad, we were only allowed to do it as juniors, right? This maybe is kind of boring for you right now. Maybe you're probably more familiar.
But I wasn't allowed to
It's probably boring for everybody, but sorry.
I said I wasn't allowed to study abroad till my junior year either.
Okay, yeah. Well, that was me too. See, these guys got to get away sooner. Okay, so the Renaissance, of course. Well, in its most rudimentary definition, anybody know what the word Renaissance means? Anybody study French? Reawakening is a good way to put it. Rebirth. It's literally is the repeat, right? And then naissance, which is the French for birth. Now, keep in mind that that's an idea of the 1800s. Michelangelo wasn't jumping around saying, "Oh, this is so great, this Renaissance." This is a way that we define a period to help us understand it. So you could say it's arbitrary. You know what arbitrary means? Anybody want to help me with that? Arbitrary? What does arbitrary mean? Arbitrary means something that I just make up. It's not necessarily based on a fact, or it's not based on evidence. It's arbitrary. Trying to think. What could I say? Well, you could say Christmas Day, the 25th, is arbitrary because it was chosen over time, and there were, in fact, the Orthodox Russians, their Christmas is I think like January 6th. So it's arbitrary in the sense that it's it was chosen by people and just established because it was helpful or easy. Now, what is not arbitrary? I guess the sun shining. That's just a fact. It's not something that we just decide, right? Is that clear? Arbitrary? I guess the opposite of arbitrary would be, I don't know what. I have to think about it. What would be the opposite of arbitrary? Specific or evidence-based or something like that. Scientific, thanks. Yeah, that's a good idea. Alrighty. So all of this was just to say that the idea that we think of the Renaissance is us on that timeline where we are looking back and saying, wow, look at what happened. The Romans had this incredibly sophisticated civilization. They had this incredibly sophisticated economy. They had the roads and the postal system and elaborate production of art and literature and military technology and all these things. I mean, you can read in the literature that survives about these elaborate theaters with water fountains and revolving stages and pulleys and weights and all kinds of incredibly, technologically sophisticated kind of functionings just for an entertainment. When you guys go to the Colosseum, there's all these trap doors and these underground things. The animals could jump out, pulleys, levers, right? And then all of that sophistication kind of declining in the Middle Ages. It's a much more rude period and rough and disorganized. All those roads fall apart, these aqueducts break down, the smaller political entities develop. And like think of all of our languages. The fact that Latin was the common language of the Roman Empire as well as Greek. And what happened when the area called Gaul, which is France today, ends up isolated from the area that we call Italy, which is then isolated from the area that we call Spain. And enough time goes by and these people are also isolated that the rudiments of those languages, of Latin, become other languages. So imagine the United States after the zombie apocalypse. And you got the people in New Hampshire and the people in Southern California and all these places. And now all of a sudden the Rocky Mountains, you just can't fly over them anymore. Or you risk your life even trying to get through them. And all of a sudden you've got 1,000 years of people over there and over here. I mean, if English was the basic language, what's it going to be after 1,000 years? I mean, the languages will have evolved separately. Does that make sense? Well, that's French, that's Spanish, that's Romanian, that's Italian. Do they still call those the Romance languages? Yeah. Well, see, I always thought when I was your age that what are they talking about? Romantic. They're not. It has nothing to do with romance. It has to do with Roman, from Latin. Right? So again, this is another example of showing you how dramatic the change is from ancient Rome to the Middle Ages. Right? So, Republican Rome, BC, Roman Empire, AD, the fall of the Roman Empire, 5th century AD, the Middle Ages, 5th century to the 15th century AD, and now the Renaissance, and now we're coming to the end finally. The 1600s is what we call, not on a historical level, forget history, but just for the art, and especially in places like Rome, the Baroque. Have you ever heard that word, Baroque? B-A-R-O, can't remember. I think is it Q-U-E? There's no C, thank you. In Italian, Barocco, with 2 C's, but in English, B-A-R-O-Q-U-E, Baroque. So, Baroque is not Renaissance. Renaissance is not medieval. These categories are there to help you understand the different periods of our timeline. Okay? Baroque, generally speaking, is the 1600s. And as far as the style, after really today, you'll know what it is. And you'll start to identify it. You'll see it all over Rome. you'll be able to look around the city and start to point out from this mix. His dog is like my dog. He won't listen.
You have a dog?
I think it's a dog. Oh, me? Sure. Well, I live here. I've got a dog. I've got a wife. I've got a kid.
Here?
Well, as far as I know, only here.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, no, I'm settled.
How long have you lived here for?
I've lived here 20. Well, I got here in 1996, so that's 25 years.
You don't have any accent? I feel like you would have picked one up.
Like an Italian accent. If I was a pretentious idiot, I suppose, and I would, you know, I cannot remember the American. I just said that I remember. You know, send me another espresso, please.
You speak Italian?
Well, yeah, I should hopefully.
25, yeah.
What? Sorry, somebody had a question. You had a question.
No, you answered that.
Okay. So, Baroque, coming to the end, Baroque is the 1600s, and Baroque is an artistic style, okay? And as I was trying to just briefly describe to you, your artistic superpowers within the next few weeks will be developing, and when you walk through the city, you'll be able to start to suss out what period they are. Because of course they're all thrown in together, they're all mixed together here. You got a church next to a Roman building, next to a medieval building, and this is true underneath you. Remember that timeline that goes this way from when?
0.
Before 0?
BC.
BC to?
AD.
All right, now do this to it. Make it vertical, horizontal, horizon, vertical. I don't know how many. I only learned geometry very late, so it's kind of a big deal to me. Vertical. This is AD, this is BC, and guess what happens when you go underneath our feet? And this is a fundamental rule for Rome that's a good thing to remember. The further down you go, the further back in time, okay? Because there's so many layers here, and that's one of the really neat things about it. So you'll walk through a city, you walk down here to Trastevere, and you'll see a medieval building, a Baroque building, a Renaissance, you'll see things that are all mixed, and this is also true underneath you. You'll walk right by an ancient Roman firehouse, but what you'll see is the modern brick building covering it, because the ground level of that firehouse is another 20 feet. It's 20 feet below the level of today. Is that clear?
Yeah.
So the further down you go in Rome, which way do you go in time?
Back.
You go back, and back is?
Down.
What was it?
Down.
It's down, BC. BC, back, BC, down, further down levels. Okay, so we've gone from prehistoric to Republican to the Empire to the Middle Ages to the Renaissance to the Baroque, and now we come to the modern era, to what we consider the modern era, the industrial era, Napoleonic France, the rise of industry and all that stuff, the technology of the modern era, okay? And really quickly, the late 1700s, which would be the time of the establishment of the American Republic, among other things. People like Thomas Jefferson and all these founding fathers, French intellectuals, British, all these people, Italians too, they look back to all those wonderful temples. They look back to the glorious Roman past and the perfection, the geometry, the symmetry. Symmetry. And here's an easy word that I want you to write down. Symmetria. Just the same word, but put T-R-I-A at the end. Symmetria. Symmetria. The principle of symmetria. What is it? It means perfect proportions. Everything in relationship to everything else. Think of a musical composition. The notes vibrating, one related to the other, and they create a harmonious whole. They create a harmonious whole. That's symmetria. And that is the ideal of the Renaissance. That is the ideal of architecture. And that is the ideal which these, in the 1800s, again, people like the architect Thomas Jefferson and others They look back at the symmetria of the Pantheon that you're going to see, the Colosseum, all those things. And they venerate it, and they copy it. And so, what's the greatest example of that you have in the United States? The Capitol. What do you have? A bunch of Roman buildings. An obelisk, Washington Monument, the White House, it's built like a Roman temple, all those places. They're all based on that past, and those are all designed by neoclassical architects. Neoclassical. What does neo mean?
New.
New. The new classical. So if neoclassical is copying the Roman past, and we call neoclassical new classical, something like the Lincoln Memorial or something, or anything like that, what would the original classical be? What would be the old classical? Colosseum. Classical is antiquity, the ancients. Okay, so neoclassical is basically a rebirth of the fashion of that Roman Greek past. All right? So this timeline that I've given you and these 6 or 7 terms that I've given you, we've kind of summed up everything that we're going to do. So if you by the time it is my intention that by the time we're done with this course, all those terms will be familiar to you. All those terms will bring to your mind images, because this is about looking. I mean, yeah, I'm babbling on right now. I'm telling you a lot of information, but what this is really about and what this is going to be about after an introduction like this is looking and identifying. And all these are just terms to help you, okay, this is that, this is that, this is that. So is that all clear? Okay. I want to tell you the last one now, the very last one, which is specific to Italy, although it had a huge influence throughout the West, and even beyond, I guess you could say. The 20th century, the age of the machine, the age of great tumult, incredibly sophisticated economies, and war becomes a lot more deadly as a result. The Russian Revolution changes everything. And 1914 to 1918, write this down. 1914 to 1918 is the First World War. Okay? 1914 to 1918. Now, when we see that, you can watch a movie. There's a movie 2 years ago called 1917. There's a million movies, a million pictures, a million photos. It's very quaint to us, Charlie Chaplin and the old fast films, and it's incredibly remote. So it's hard for us to imagine how deadly it was, the First World War. Because up until the First World War, they were still doing cavalry charges. You still had armies on horseback. These guys that were your age were going over these trenches and getting mowed down by the thousands by these newfangled things called machine guns. Right? All these concepts didn't exist for them. It would be like us being dropped on the surface of Mars. I mean, they couldn't even imagine what was in front of them, because it was all new. And that devastation, and there was a real pandemic, I think, far worse than what we've been experiencing, the Spanish flu after the war. So all of that tumult, which devastated Europe and was very sobering. You know what sobering means? It's the opposite of drunk, but sobering. Sobering is when you wake up and you go, oh my God, what is this? You're waking up to what's in front of you. Something sobering. And that tumult led to, of course, changes, because it always does. And in Italy, in the very early 1920s, what had been an unstable democracy that didn't work very well, not a country with a democratic tradition at all. There was a king, there was a parliament, all blah, 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 blah. But out of that devastation, out of all of that tumult, out of that massive epidemic, out of all that death, What do you think people want more than anything else if they're, again, can't go into the street, don't have food?
Stability.
They want order, they want stability. And they got it good and hard with Mussolini. Mussolini, okay? The dictator. Well, dictator, you know, these are all vague terms again, but let's just say strong man, you know, blah, blah, blah. So that era is called the fascist era. The,
What years?
the 1920s to the 1940s, 20 years, okay? The fascist era. So now we have a political term. And fascist, you spell F-A-S-C-I-S-T, fascist. F-A-S-C-I-S-T, okay? Now the reason I mention this is because the fascist era was also an era of innovation and the state as almost like a church with the supreme leader, you know? And of course, the most famous examples or infamous would be Hitler, National Socialist Germany, Russia under the Communist Revolution, Stalin, you know. I mean, if you've ever seen the movies and stuff, the red flags, the monuments, the symbols, oh, hail the leader, blah, blah, blah. So that's the idea. But specifically in Italy, under fascism, there was a new architecture, a new art that embodied this optimism, this power, using technology for this glorious future. There was faith in what we call progress. Progress, and write this down, progress became a religion.
What do you mean?
Progress became a religion? Well, it still is.
I like that.
I mean, if you look at, you know, for example, I think you could look at that with this pandemic. Some people think that, you know, technology is going to save us, whether it's a disease or global warming or anything. Technology is going to save us, and maybe it will. But you know, who's to say? But for people for whom that's a faith, technology is going to save us. You see what I'm saying? I mean, maybe it will, maybe it's not. It's just like me saying there is one true prophet and his name is Muhammad, and or one true God, Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. That's another faith that some people believe and others don't, just like Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism or whatever, right? Progress becomes something people can venerate religiously. So the fascist era, progress is a kind of religion, and it's modern. And that brings us to the modern era and the kind of, especially the architecture that we'll see of the fascist era, which expresses modernism, okay? And that's where we'll end. But you'll be able to identify those. Maybe, you know, I don't know, if any of you drove into Rome when you first arrived from the airport, you might have noticed that big square. That square building with all the arches. Anybody know it? It's called the Square Colosseum in what's called Aor. That's the fascist era. So the glorious Roman past is now kind of modernized for the glorious future, the glorious industrial future. All right. So do you guys have any questions about any of that right now? I don't know if I probably went over on it. All right. We're back, and we're talking about aqueducts. And we're talking about who replaced the emperors but the popes. And I've mentioned briefly the Virgin Water, the Aqua Vergine, the Pincho Hill. And before that I was talking about the Mercatino anyway, so it doesn't matter. Let me just make sure this is working. Yeah, okay. So, the popes, you could say, in a sense, replaced the emperors. So, who do you think rebuilt some of these aqueducts? The church, the popes. The church becomes the government. The church becomes the government. Okay? So the pope is not just a religious leader. When you run the government, what kind of leader are you? Well, no, not necessarily. You're political. Politics. You're political. So the Pope is a political leader as well as a religious leader. Right? Now, when you are a political leader, you want to advertise yourself. You want everybody to know how great you are. You want everybody to know how benevolent and nice you are and how you take care of your people. Right?
That was hilarious.
You're looking at, oh, that's too bad. You're looking at a kind of, you could say, an advertisement. It's irritating. Good. Yeah. Take a look at the inscription. Take a picture of it. Remember, you guys, I'm not going to keep reminding you about that. Take all the pictures you want because you're going to be using them. You're going to want them. You're going to want those pictures. All right?
So, is that what that says? Like the Anno Domini, the MDC? Is
Okay,
that
what does
the
Anno
actual-
Domini mean?
AD.
Yeah.
AD,
But then,
year of our Lord. Yeah,
And then the others is MDC that stands for whatever the code name is, like,
that's a good question. No,
no.
Giovanni, no. It is the Roman numerals. Roman numerals, if you haven't learned them, you'll learn them now. I wasn't planning on. Does anybody know Roman numerals?
No.
Giovanni over there. Giovanni number one
Very
does.
simple one.
All right. Well, Roman numerals are, of course, Roman, and you want to learn them. So let's do this real fast. Write this down. M is 1,000. M. It looks like an M to us. It's 1,000. Because, in fact, in Italian, how do we say 1,000? Mille. Mille, which comes from the Latin, right? So M is 1,000. C, or D. Excuse me, D. D is 500. So already we know we got a good idea of the year. We're getting closer. So what is 1,000 plus 500?
1500.
1,500. So we're already getting an idea of where we are. C. In Italian, 100 is cento. C for cento. 100. So 1,000 plus 500 plus 100 is 1,600. And now X. What is X? 10. And then what is 1? 1. 16, 12. So listen carefully. 1,000 M plus 500 D plus 100 C plus X 10 plus 2 ones 16, 12. So now you have two parts. What's the first part?
The
AD.
Year of our Lord, Anno Domini, 1612. Right? So obviously these kind of things are all over the place. And what I would suggest is go a little further. Go on YouTube and get a 5-minute Roman numeral tutorial, because that's the basic, okay? Now, pontificatus, it's practically, you can see it in English, pontificate. Pontificate means pontiff. Pontiff is the pope. He's the pontiff. He's the leader. So pontificatus means the year, like we say presidency, for example, the presidency. Pontificate. What year of his pontificate? What year? Settimo. Have you guys learned any numbers in Italian? 7. Sette. And in Latin, septimo. Okay? So what that means is 1612 was the 7th year of his rule as pope. So when did he become pope?
1605.
Yeah.
1605.
Just says, that's right. So we know that this pope, and there's his name up there, Paulus Quintus, Paul V. Paul V was pope. He became pope in 1605. Now we can also tell his family, because remember, these were aristocrats. And when you're an aristocrat, you've got a family crest up at the top. You see the family crest? Can you see what's on there? That shield, that coat of arms? What can you see
Eagle.
in the shield of arms? There's an eagle and a dragon. The eagle and the dragon on a shield is the symbol of the family of Paul V. And what's that family's name? I'm going to tell you. And it's an important one because they left their mark in a lot of places around Rome. The name is Borghese. Borghese. B as in boy, Borghese. Borghese. The Borghese family. Paul V, Borghese. So I want you to write this down. Paul, V for 5, Paul, Roman numeral 5, Borghese. We refer to popes by their name, the Roman numeral if they're, their order, because they often name themselves after earlier popes, and then their family, their aristocratic family. So Paul V, Borghese. Paul V, Borghese. Became pope in?
1605.
Right, so look at that, man. You guys already got that. So this is what era for art? The 1600s. Anybody remember? The Baroque. So you see, it'll all come together. The Baroque period, the 1600s. This is a pope of the Baroque period. So, ergo, this fountain is, generally speaking, what style of art do you think? Is it medieval? Is it neoclassical? Is it Renaissance? There are definitely Renaissance elements, but it's the 1600s. So what period do we call it? The Baroque. So you're looking at an example of Baroque art. Well, specifically Baroque architecture. You see how that works? We got a date, we got a name, we got a style, and they've all come together. Question from Giovanni.
You mentioned that a lot of the popes at that time were aristocrats. Did they have the same selection process they do now, like the cardinals vote for the new pope?
Giovanni's asking about the election of the pope. The popes were always elected by the cardinals. So, yeah, that system is generally the same. Okay? Now, before we continue, well, just somebody tell me the time.
It's 10:54.
10:54. Okay, good. So we have 55 minutes left. I want to tell you a couple more things here, and then we're going to go to the church. So, what do you see when you look at this? What are its characteristics? So we can understand what Baroque means, the style of this period. What do we see?
Badass.
It's badass. Is that what you said?
Dragons everywhere. Some eagles. I don't know.
Okay,
I wouldn't mess
all right.
with Paul V.
Now, the eagles and the dragons, do you think those are specific to the Baroque period? No. The eagle's an imperial symbol. The dragon, that's the typical, we think of the no, I was going to say, and also the eagle is ancient Rome. The eagle was the symbol of the Caesars. You can see phenomenal sculptures of eagles from ancient Rome. So, those are not specific to the period. You guys got to listen. But look at the style. Look at the elements. And by elements, like, well, for example, what's an element? I see a good element that there's 6 of them. The columns. That's an element. Those columns, and write this down. This is very typical of Rome and these different periods. These columns that you see are recycled. They didn't use that word, but that's what they are. They're reused. They're from somewhere else. And this you'll see happens again and again. Stuff gets reused. Why is the middle of ancient Rome a ruin? What happened to all the beautiful temples, all the beautiful monuments, all the beautiful stuff? They dismantled it, they took it away, and they reused it. These columns are, and write this down, these columns are from the original church, the church that we call a basilica, the Basilica of St. Peter's, which is at the Vatican, which is the main church of the city and the church of the popes, right? These columns are from the original Basilica of St. Peter's. So that already tells you something about today's St. Peter's. Is today's St. Peter's Basilica the original church? Huh? No, listen to this. Listen up. When I say that they're recycled from from the basilica, what that tells us is the basilica that you'll see, and basilica just is the name of a big fancy church. The Basilica of St. Peter's at the Vatican is the rebuilt church. Okay, so this is common. We're talking about generations and centuries. Stuff gets rebuilt, right? So the church that you'll see at the Vatican is not the original St. Peter's. It was rebuilt. And it was rebuilt in the 1600s, which is what era? So you can say the Basilica of St. Peter's at the Vatican is generally what style? A Baroque church. We haven't looked at it, but you'll see. Okay.
So those go to the Vatican.
With our group, I haven't decided yet. You'll go with or without me, but I haven't decided. I don't know. With me, dedicating a whole day, I'm not sure.
So just like to review, what is this called? Like,
what is it?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the fountain of this hill that we're on, and this hill is called the Gianicolo. Giancolo, Gianicolo. The Borghese fountain, the name for the Pope, Paul V Borghese, the Borghese fountain of the Gianicolo. The Borghese fountain of the Gianicolo. Okay? Gianicolo? G-I-A-N, Jan. Gianni. Gianicolo. Gianicolo. Okay? All right. So, the columns are reused from the original basilica. The coat of arms is the Borghese Pope, the family of the Borghese. What dominates it? Because, of course, what's the religion? There's a cross. Okay? What makes it Baroque? Specifically? The curves. A lot of curves. You see those up there? They look like a scroll, like let's say you were looking at a scroll sideways and you unrolled it. You see that up there? What's that called? A volute. Volute, which is a technical term. You should write it down. Volute. V-O-L-U-T-E. Volute. Okay? But the easiest way, I think, to identify Baroque is it's a lot of movement. So write this down. The Baroque is a lot of movement, a lot of curves, fluid, and especially theatrical. Just think of a stage and movement. And those are the elements that we have. The last thing, the inscription. What does it tell us? I won't translate it specifically, but what it celebrates is that this Pope is telling the Roman people that he's brought this water from the Lake Bracciano. You see it says Braccianese, from the Bracciano Lake, to provide this side of the city with the water which gives them health and cleanliness, right? So he's advertising himself and he's advertising his munificence. Munificence. Munificence means generosity. Okay? Now, that inscription, you'll see the same kind of inscriptions in ancient Rome. So, who do you think an inscription like this would celebrate 2,000 years ago? A pope? There were no popes. Who would be an emperor? That's right, an emperor or a general or somebody who's paid to build a new Roman bath or build a road or the inscription on a tomb. So, who are the popes copying? Yeah, they're copying ancient Rome. And that's a big part of this story, is that so much of, they're always looking to the past, using the past, copying the past, and of course stealing from the past, literally taking all these materials and reusing them. So we have columns that are reused, we have an inscription copying the Roman style, and we'll see many of these. Okay. Now, do you guys have any questions about any of that? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just one more question. But the people on those pillars there, are those supposed to represent?
The two faces? No, those are just decorative. Just decorative. All right, let's go. Hopefully we can find a place in the shade for a few minutes. Okay, now we're continuing. We've come from the fountain of Paul V on the Gianicolo, and now we're at a monument from the fascist era, which I'll be talking about in a moment. So, what was your name that asked?
Pat.
Matt?
Pat.
Pat with a P?
Yeah.
Patrizio. So Patrizio asked us about those things sticking up in the distance, about I guess a mile away. That's the top of the church, the Basilica of San Giovanni, St. John's Basilica, St. John in Lateran. Okay, and the facade is massive. Massive columns, massive statues on top. You see how huge they are from here. That basilica also, like most of them, has been rebuilt. Some things get rebuilt dramatically, like in one window of time. More often, though, things get added to and changed and altered over centuries. So more often than not, you'll visit a church or could be a palace, different kinds of structures, where it'll be more of like a composite. There'll be some stuff from one period, some, like for example, a church might be a medieval church, and then they stick a Baroque facade on top, and then inside there could be stuff from different period, different tombs, different eras, different floor. It could be all mixed up, right? So that is again why at the beginning I talked about the timeline, right? Because you'll see all the stuff thrown together, and it's up to you to kind of unpack it and get it, kind of pull it all out like a web onto that timeline, right? It's rare that something is a uniquely individual time. Although Paul V's fountain is a good example, because that was built just, of course it's relatively simple, so this was built specifically just in those couple years. Don't forget though the engineering behind it, because the aqueduct had to bring it had to be built to bring the water in, and the aqueduct is 20 miles or something or more all the way outside of the city. Okay? Sorry, I don't ever want to have my fly open. So it's San Giovanni's worth visiting, and its facade is neoclassical. Its facade was built in the 1700s. So even though we haven't seen it, write that down. The Church of San Giovanni has a neoclassical facade. So just because it's an example of what I mentioned earlier. Neoclassical facades. It's the 1700s, the facade. The church itself, though, was first built by the Emperor Constantine. Anybody ever heard of the Emperor Constantine? And if you have, you might know why he's important. You know why he's important, Emperor Constantine? The Emperor Constantine, in I think it was the year 315 AD, write this down, this is important on your timeline. The Emperor Constantine, I think it was the year 315 AD, late Roman Empire. Constantine made Christianity legal.
For year?
315 AD. The Edict of, I believe, I'll have to double check. I'm pretty sure it's the Edict of Milan. I don't know. I won't, never mind about that because I can't remember. The Edict making Christianity legal, 315 AD. He converted to Christianity, it is said. But the most important thing about Constantine was he allowed the Christians to now worship openly. So what do you think the Christians started building as soon as their religion's legal? Churches. So churches, legal churches, their origins go back to the 4th century. Remember, 300s is the 4th century. 4th century. 4th century is the time of Constantine. Right. I know it's overwhelming. I know it's a lot. Are you guys? How do you feel?
Good.
Your brains are okay? Eat a lot of salmon, brain food, you know. What are they called? Omega?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to want to do that.
That's definitely living large for us.
Salmon? Smoked salmon you get at the supermarket.
It's a little out of
It's not
budget.
oh no, you can eat that. It's good for you. It's
I'm
cheap.
on, pasta.
Pasta with salmon.
Yeah, ramen.
Oh, eat the good pasta. These days you guys can go on YouTube and like get tutorials. You can learn how to cook some local stuff. But it is true.
Actually, a nice cook.
It is true that, you know, you can, the nice thing about Italy is you can eat cheaply and very healthy, you know, fresh fruit, fresh vegetables.
The fruit here is so much better than in America.
Yeah, generally, and it doesn't have to be like, I don't buy like boutique fruit. I don't buy organic anything. The fruit generally, fruit, vegetable, just buy seasonal. So now over the next couple months, you'll start getting like the fall fruit. I can't remember what it, you know, pears and things like that. Yeah, so yeah, go to there's an outdoor market down there in Trastevere every morning. There's a big outdoor market in the morning, about 10 minutes walk from the university. You go up to these big, you know, stands and everything's there, and you can buy, you know, definitely you want to take advantage of that. All right. So, how much time do we have left? Anybody tell me the time?
40 minutes.
It's a little
39 minutes. 39 minutes. The reason I stopped here, other than the comfort, is I wanted you to look behind you. I know it makes you bend your neck, but maybe just twist yourselves around a little bit. Okay. Now, yeah. Write this down. Really important. A big part of art and architecture is, of course, what you make the stuff out of. The materials. The materials are, to me, really interesting because it tells us about the commercial activity, the commerce. It tells us about, you know, what was available, how did they get it, how did they make it, where did they get it from, right? On my little holiday, I finally went up into the mountains of Tuscany called the Apuani, and we went to the quarry of Michelangelo, an open air quarry, just, you know, where the marble was literally cut out and dragged away by horses for Michelangelo's David and the stuff you'll see around here. Carrara marble. The town's called Carrara, and you know, I don't know how much extra time you have, but it's a you know, it's I don't know, not really a day trip, 2-day trip, but it's a cool area. Anyway, these materials tell us a huge part of the story, right? Look at the material right here. You're sitting on it. What do we see? Can you describe any characteristics of this marble you're sitting on, this stone? For example, is it shiny? It's not shiny. Is it perfectly uniform? Is it perfectly uniform?
I like that.
Not really. It's got a lot of tiny little holes, doesn't it? You could describe that, I think, as porous. Porous, right? And what color would you describe it as?
Gray.
Grayish? Well, I suppose. Well, it's kind of dirty. That's not so gray behind us.
Tan. Yeah,
Yeah,
like a tan.
off-white, off-white,
Like
right?
off-white, good
Kind of
stuff.
creamy, off-white. Like, look at that piece right there. That's a nice, clean piece, the base right there. Okay. Sorry about the gardener's noise. Okay, it's called travertine. 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 You spell that T-R-A-V-E-R-T-I-N-E. T-R-A-V-E-R-T-I-N-E. Travertine. You got it? Travertine. The Italians, they just take away that E at the end that we have in English and they put an O, and it becomes travertino. Look at these guys. They're going to a wedding or something. Oh no, that's a bad sign. Because oh no, you guys, we might not be able to go into my church. There's a wedding.
Big O.
I didn't account for that.
Maybe we'll join the wedding.
Yeah, we can definitely try.
Well, we'll definitely get we'll get a good look at the classic fashions of the wedding, because you know Italians, they love to dress up. So that may put a crimp in the last bit of our visit, but remember in Italy, like I told you, what did I tell you? There's always a plan B. You got to have a plan B, because now that there's a wedding in the church, we won't be able to go inside today. And I had planned a whole big thing inside. It was going to be the grand finale. It was going to be amazing. There was going to be, you know, flamethrowers and special effects. But now, you know, we're out of luck. We're going to have to do the other thing. No, but seriously, I had planned an important thing for the last part in there. We're not going to be able to do it. We're just going to do something else. Okay? But anyway, back to travertine. Probably the most famous monument in Rome. What would that be for you? Colosseum. Well, guess what the Colosseum is made out of? Travertine, mostly. And do you think when they built the Colosseum in the 1st century AD, around 80 AD, the 1st century AD, that's when the Colosseum was built.
Wait, when?
The 1st century AD, about 80 AD. Okay? That's a lot of travertine. Now, do you think they're going to, something that big, they're going to go to the trouble of having ships bring stone from Greece or something? Where are you probably going to want to get your material at that point? Somewhere local. That is the magic word. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Somewhere local. And the travertine quarries are right over by those hills. Right over there. About, I don't know, 15 miles away, I guess. And you can see them. They're still functioning. And you'll go out there to Tivoli area, which is, I highly recommend. You guys can you want to do a cool day trip, take the local train to Tivoli. Beautiful little hilltop town. It's like €5 for the train ticket. And, you know, the sheets of travertine for all those kitchen tabletops throughout the world, they're still quarrying it. It's a quarry that's been available, as you can see, for how many years ago is the Colosseum then, more or less? About, yeah, a little less than 2,000 years ago. So those quarries have been active. So, all of that to specify that material travertine. Now, look here. What is it made out of? It's made out of travertine. if you had to guess, since you don't know yet, what era might this be? Is it the same? Yeah, good. Yeah, you familiar with it, or you just making a, huh?
No, you said it. You said it when we were.
I said the word fascist, but how did you know that this is fascist?
When we were coming here, some guy showed us the art building. I forget what it's called, the square.
Oh, the Square Coliseum.
It's exactly.
Right. Yeah. So he saw the most famous example of fascist architecture, which is the Square Coliseum. The Square Coliseum is the most famous example of fascist architecture. And this is the exact same style. The Square Coliseum, it's made out of the same material. What's the material? Travertine. Well, you haven't seen it, so you'll have to look it up for the time being. But what it is the fascist building. So what does that tell us when you look at this? It's made out of this material. So Mussolini and that fascist political idea, what are they telling us about their heritage, their ideals, their attitude? What is it based on? What is its root? Is it the Middle Ages? If it's made out of the same stuff as a Colosseum and it's got archways, the glory of ancient Rome. The glory of ancient Rome. So ancient Rome with those marching centurions and the emperor and all of that kind of military power and that kind of, the military eagle, the power of the emperor, the power of the empire. So, in synthesis, what does that tell us about what the fascists the fascist ideal? What do they want to communicate? That they're based on, what are their values? Are their values peace and love and rainbows and we're all friends? No, I don't think so. What are their values? I mean, not that they want to go attack and kill people. They're not murderers either, but it's power and force and militant and so on, right? It's the idea, it's virile, I guess you could say. And in fact, Mussolini really had that kind of attitude. He strutted around, right? Okay. So, I just wanted to explain to you a little bit of that ideology. You have political ideologies, right? And the ideology is being expressed with a material. The material is telling us something about an idea. That's an interesting way of thinking of it, right? The material comes from ancient Rome. Ancient Rome is all about conquest and glory and power and order and civilization and technology, forward movement. And so that's part of we could say that's part of the fascist ideology. Of course, it's part of democratic ideology too. It just depends. And maybe there's a different point of view. It's not so militant, but we've seen everybody worships progress. The 20th century was all about progress as a religion, whether it was fascist, Nazis, or democracies. Everybody's like, all of our problems are going to be solved by technology. Right? So, that's the ideology behind the materials. That's the ideology of the fascist era. What era is that? What are the years, more or less? Anybody remember the fascist era? 20th century. What part of the 20th century? 1920s, 40s. Good. Okay. Now, specifically, if you look carefully, the dates up there, what are the dates? 1849. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, there's a military eagle. This is specifically dedicated to the fallen soldiers of a much earlier period, the 1849 and 1870, because those were the 1800s was when Italy was being united. This is really important to remember, that Italy was not a united country for most of its existence. Italy has only been a fully united country with Rome as its capital since 1870, 1871. Who ruled here in Rome, remember? Huh? No, well, no, the Pope. Up until 1870, Rome was ruled by the Pope. And then you had kings, princes, all kinds of different, all over Italy. So this is just a little aside. This is why you go to practically every Italian town or city, there's always a nice big piazza. There's a big government building. The government building could be from the 1400s or the 1300s. I recommend seeing Siena. Siena is so beautiful. You guys can take a bus there, go overnight, it'd be better. But Siena is a wonderful example. Siena was a medieval commune, meaning the government was that local government. It was their own country. It was a city-state, right? And this is common throughout Italy. So this is why when you go to Venice, there's the Palace of the Doge. When you go to Naples, there's the Palace of the King. And it's as if, because it's not just as if, it's literally that every important city in Italy was the capital of its area. Every local, not everyone, but generally speaking, many of those cities throughout Italy, Florence, Naples, Siena, Venice, and Milan, and many others, they were the center of a political power. So again and again, they used their local architecture and all those things to express their local power. Okay? So this is a fundamental thing, a fundamental principle to understand why Italy is the way it is. It was divided up into many little countries for centuries. Okay? And this specific monument is dedicated to the soldiers that were fighting the French, in fact, 1870, they were fighting the French to get them out. 1849, I think they were fighting, I don't know, I'd have to look it up, I can't remember. But these were the struggles for the unification of Italy. So did it happen quickly, the unification of Italy? No. It took a couple generations. It was a slow process. And you have to write this down. It's not important for our course particularly, but it's a good thing to remember. It's a good word to remember. It's called the Risorgimento. Risorgimento. We spell it Risorgimento. 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 Got it? Risorgimento.
What does it mean?
Well, I guess it literally means resurgence. And it was writers, intellectuals, soldiers. Garibaldi's, you've probably heard of, the most famous. He was the military leader of the Risorgimento. And what it was the movement for Italy's unification to become a modern state. Italy never had a single unified system. That's its glory, and that's why you have, as I said, so many different places with so much civic pride, local identity, big monumental buildings, lots of artwork, because they each developed their own, whether it was the Sicilians or the Neapolitans or the Venetians or the Milanese or the Romans, and on and on and on. They each had their own identity that they celebrated, and thanks to that, every little step of the way you go through Italy, it's like visiting, in some sense, another country. There's a lot of, and even the dialect, you have the different dialects. Believe me, they speak a really different Italian in Sicily than they do in Tuscany, than Venice, and on, right? So Italy became a united country in the 1800s, right? And this is a key to why there's so much diversity in the political, cultural, artistic history. Okay? Write down what I just said, because I said it well. I don't even remember how I said it. How did I say it? Italy's political diversity over many, many centuries is a source of the artistic wealth and cultural wealth, because they were all so independent. I said it a totally different way, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Resurgent?
Resurgent?
It's when,
To well, go ahead. Huh?
It's when like Italy became.
Okay. Well, Risorgimento is the name of the political movement. Risorgimento is the name of the political movement that was all about Italy becoming a united country to be equal to the other already powerful countries. The idea of to be like Britain was, to be like France was, which were already fully united single states, nations. Italy was not a nation. Italy was divided up. That's the Risorgimento movement. I said it in English, which just specifically is the term, the equivalent, like resurgence. A resurgence of national pride, a resurgence of single focus and so on, and being a single state. But the term that you need to remember for a quiz would be risorgimento. Okay?
How are you on spelling mistakes?
Spelling mistakes, I don't like them. I would make an effort to avoid that.
Try my best.
You know, you need to spell. It's good to spell. Okay, what time do we have?
11:30.
All right. I've really given you a lot. I'm aware of that. I hope you guys are.
Quite a bit.
Well, I won't. Again, just do a basic. Do kind of a basic review. Why don't I do this to make it less intimidating, because it's been so much material. The main thing I'll do on the quiz will be the. There it is! There they come! The old ball and chain. The old ball and chain. I was supposed to get married this summer, but I got COVID literally 5 days before we were to leave for Sicily, and the rules are that you have to stay home for like 10 days. So I ruined everything. Everything got blown up. We're doing it another year from now. That's why I went to North. Well, I live with my companion for already years. Oh yeah, so what I was going to say, the quiz, just to make it easier, I would like to not have it be overly burdensome. The quiz will be primarily the definitions of those artistic periods of the timeline I've discussed and their dates. So I'll say like, a question could be something like, when approximately was the Renaissance? When approximately is the Roman Republic? What does prehistoric mean? Okay, stuff like that. That okay? You like that?
Thank you.
All right, so our last 15 minutes of the lecture, we're gonna go see something right down here. The last 5 minutes, meaning 15 minutes before 12, don't let me forget, I got to get that attendance out, and you need to all sign your names next to your.
So what time?
5 minutes before 10 minutes to, which is 15 minutes to. Exactly, at 45. What do we have? We have 13 minutes? Good, okay. So let's go see the facade of the church.
That was her father.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go down here, you guys. This is the last stop. Yeah, got out of luck with the interior of the church.
Where's the church at?
Yeah. Huh, pretty funky car, Chrysler. Okay. Here, just come over here in front of me. Just stand here. We'll just be here for 5 minutes on our feet. Just come over here in front of me for a couple minutes. Okay, there's a tiny speck of palm shade. We won't be out here for too long. All right. So obviously we're not going to go in after all today. We'll just do it further. We'll do it later in the course. We'll meet here again at a later date because I do want to take you in there. Okay. So you do need to write down a few things, okay? So this is important. This last little bit, the last 10 minutes. Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, I didn't turn it off. Thanks for reminding me, though. I appreciate that. You guys don't feel free to keep doing that. Let me make sure. Yeah, it is. Okay. So this church is called San Pietro, Saint Peter, San Pietro. Okay. San Pietro. I don't know if they need it. Let's wait. I don't think they need us to move. No, they're good.
We're just gonna jump in and
How do you
crash
spell
it.
that?
San Pietro.
Oh.
San Pietro in Montorio. In Montorio. In, and then Mont, Montorio. 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 Okay, as soon as she gets out, you guys, we're going to say Viva la Sposa. You have to say that means long live the bride, okay? Here, Viva la Sposa. You got to do it. It's good. Here, just repeat it to me.
I'll do it with you.
Repeat it to me quietly. Listen and repeat. Viva la Sposa. Okay? Let's wait till she gets out. Okay? Viva la Sposa, okay? Let's wait for her to get out, which is with her father.
I think she's angry.
Well, it's her wedding day. She wants everything to be just exactly right.
Yeah, and we're
Okay,
gonna
here we go.
go
Ready?
back.
1, 2, 3. Viva la Sposa! Clap, 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 clap. There you go. Ciao. Okay. That's the kind of thing. That's an Italian thing. Okay. Alrighty. So it's good luck for them. Okay, so it's back to us now. Well, I guess there's no point in me trying to say anything until they've gone in because everybody's gonna watch. Oh, they'll see, but like the picture thing. It's like most of the wedding is pictures, and then when they come out, they're gonna spend like 2 hours just getting pictures. Like this huge thing with the pictures, and then because they get this gigantic book at the end. There she goes. Wow.
She'll be at the top of the stairs and her dress will still be at the bottom.
Yeah.
Where's
the music at?
Well, they'll perhaps inside. The groom is waiting inside.
We should go inside with her. Just follow her. Be in the video.
All right. Okay. All right. Back to us. I want us at 15 minutes to. We're out of here. How much time do we have left? Our timekeeper.
8 minutes.
5 plus 3.
Huh?
8 minutes.
So we have 8 minutes. Okay. Good. So I need you to focus for these 8 minutes. All right.
Okay, good.
We good?
Yes.
All right. So San Pietro in Montorio. That's the name of this church. Right. San Pietro in Montorio. Now, Saint Peter. That's who it is. St. Peter's Basilica, not to be confused, the main St. Peter's is the one at the Vatican. Why is this here on this hill? Because it's a rare thing. It's because there was a misinterpretation of an old writing, an old inscription. Over that way, there's the wall around the city. You can see a pyramid in Rome, an Egyptian-style pyramid. It's part of the wall of the city, and it's a tomb from ancient Rome. That pyramid is still there. There was another such pyramid, another such tomb over there. It's gone now. It was, like I've said, they rebuild, they take all the stuff, they reuse it. So this inscription that was misinterpreted, listen carefully, this inscription misinterpreted stated that Peter had been martyred in Rome, he'd been crucified in Rome, between those two pyramids. And then somebody in the 1400s, I guess, they measured the distance from that pyramid that was there to the pyramid that is still there, and they came up with this spot. So the idea was they thought that this was the spot where Peter had been martyred. And Peter's martyrdom is an important part of the Christian story. He's martyred like many of the apostles. for his beliefs. He's crucified Peter upside down. Remember that, because you can always tell when you see images of Peter, paintings, he's crucified upside down. You can say, that's St. Peter.
Why was that?
Why was that? That's a good question. Well, he says he didn't want to be compared to his master, Christ. He wanted to die in a more humble way. Okay? So, look at the facade. First of all, think of what we just saw, the two things that we just saw. Is it similar? Is it different?
Pretty similar.
What's similar? The same material, absolutely. There's, what is it called, that material?
Starts with a T.
Travertine. It's travertine stone, so that's true. But the Baroque, what about compared to that Baroque fountain? Any nice little curvy things?
Arcs. Squares.
Well, there's there is, but it's not specifically the like eagles and things like that.
More relevant.
It's more the form, the whole style. And in fact, what did we see? We saw the Baroque curves and the fluidity, theatrical. Remember, it was a lot of that movement, the water coming out. I mean, would you describe this as, full of movement and theatrical?
No.
Well, how would you describe it if you could
Pretty
find
rigid.
rigid? You could use that word. Severe. Anything else?
Absolutely. Definitely cooked this up in 5th grade.
Anything else? Rigid, severe, linear,
Symmetrical.
symmetrical. It has the symmetria, that's for
Good
sure.
looking.
It's severe, it's simple. It has elements that are still from ancient Rome, but probably closer to ancient Rome. It's more simple, okay? And what you're looking at here is the Renaissance, an aspect of the Renaissance where it's very simple, very severe, proportional, symmetrical, and based on things like the temples, right? So it has a severity and a simplicity to it. The last thing I'll say, last couple things, the triangular part on the top, that's called a timpani. Timpany, timpani. That's the element, the architectural element. It's called the timpani. Okay? And then you see there's what are called pilasters, which are like, almost copied from columns. You'll see the same thing. You see the pilaster up there, and then the decoration, which is Corinthian up there. Corinthian is when it's all. You see the capitals. You see there's one on either side. It's as if it's like a Roman temple. It's holding up the front, and those are Corinthian, where they've got like the leaves and the movement. You see what I'm talking about? You understand what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. You see how the line? It's as if it was a column going straight up. It's divided in the middle, but it goes straight up, and at the very top, it's a Corinthian capital, right? You know where you'll see the exact same thing? The Colosseum. The Colosseum. Okay? So it's copied from the Colosseum in a different way, in a more austere way. Okay? So, in closing, you have here now a contrast. You saw the Baroque, you saw that fluidity. Here you see a century earlier, more severe, more simple, not so theatrical. Capiche? Is that good?
Yep.
All right, so before we all say goodbye, anybody have any questions? Okay, I'll remind you for the last time, make sure you're good with your MyAUR, and I'm going to be sending, like I said, very soon, if not today, by tomorrow, an email where you'll get the Zoom code so you can follow this short 30-minute tutorial about Google Maps, which you're going to want to do for the homework. Okay? Okay. And the last thing, I guess, let me. Why don't I do it this time? That way I can get your names real. That way I can start learning your names. Let me just get my pen. Where's my glasses? Okay. Oops, our jumping pen. I wonder if it's live music or if that's just a recording. Okay. So,
Sounds pretty live to me.
could be. Could be. Okay, Timothy Fox? All right, that's you. You're here. Patrick Heaney?
Right here.
Is that right? Did I pronounce it right? Heaney?
Yep.
Sam Holland?
Yep. Up here.
Okay. Wiley Clark?
Yep.
Okay. Wiley?
Yep.
Ryan Mull?
Yeah.
Is that the way you say it?
Yeah.
Holly Russell?
Here.
That's you? Huh, that's funny. I just looked at my sister's name's Holly.
Really?
Easy to remember. Adam Friedman?
Here.
Yeah. Catherine Treat?
Here.
Okay. Sophia Wong?
Here.
There you are. Sophia, you know what it means, right? What does Sophia mean? You don't know what your name means? It means wisdom. The great church of the Eastern Empire, Constantine's Istanbul, Constantinople. It's called the Holy Wisdom, the Church of Hagia Sophia. Olivia Sperber. Okay, hi. Riley Hamill. Okay, Riley. Alyssa Miranda. Is that right? Catherine Arete. Okay, so you're the Italian, right? A little bit. Arnav, or is it Arnau? Arnau Gupta. Okay. Jonathan Fallon. Okay, yeah. Giovanni. Eva Kami.
Here. It's Eva.
Eva. Is that Turkish? Jami?
Albanian.
Albanian. Wow, cool. And Giovanni Kubanik. All right, so that's everybody. Let me just see how many that is. 5, 10, 15, 18. Is that right? Everybody's here?
Yeah, we all made it.
You all made it. I didn't even notice. Okay. Anybody have any questions about anything? We're all done. You're free. What time is it?
11:46.
Good. Well, you get a bonus 4 minutes free.
Nice.
Okay. If you if you feel like writing it down, you can. But I of course will be sending you an email with the meeting spot, and I'll show you on the Google map too, because that's probably a good thing that we'll try to integrate. Is like I'll put on the Google map like the meeting spots as well. But where we're going to meet is a place called Largo, Argentina, which is easy to remember. Argentina, Largo, Argentina. It's at the bottom of the hill across the river. And the Largo, which is an archaeological area, we're going to be going back now to, we're going to try to do some chronology. So we're going to go back to ancient Rome, to the Republican Rome. But anyway, at Largo, Argentina, there's a big bookshop with a big red facade called Feltrinelli. So I'll be telling you all that later, but we'll meet at the Feltrinelli bookshop at 9 o'clock. So remember to give yourself that time. You know, you're kind of stuck with this class. You definitely got to give yourself the time to, and take into account that you might get lost and stuff, right? And also figure out the best way to get there and whatnot.
Is public transit like busy in the morning?
Generally, well, for everybody that's down in Trastevere, have you noticed the big boulevard where the trams go by?
Yeah.
Well, you just hop on that tram across the river and it'll take you straight to Largo, Argentina. So it's actually really easy and fast. The 8, yeah. Yeah, as far as I know, it's the 8 tram. But don't take my word for it. I don't want to steer you wrong. Oh, wait, let me turn this off.